I'm just going to take you over to my colleague, Dan Mwangi, who's sitting with a very old gentleman who we recognize, of course, the former Minister of Planning, Honorable Henry Obocha, who's now the chairman of the Privatization Commission. Dan, if I could just let you in on a secret, Henry Obocha actually was the chief accountant at those days of the Parathron Board of Kenya, which, of course, was a flagship board in Nakuru. So perhaps you might ask him what will happen to the Parathron Board, and is there any chance for privatization on that side?
And thank you, Laban. I'm sure he's heard your question, and we'll begin with that actually, just so that we don't forget it. Thank you very much for joining us. He's the chairman of the Privatization Commission, as Laban has rightly said, Henry Obocha, and he's the former Minister of Planning and National Development. Parathron Board, he's just mentioned about it. What is the future from where you sit?
Thank you. I was in Parathron Board some times back. That was long time ago when it was doing very well. I left in the late 1888, 1889. And in the 90s, that's when things didn't work very well. And soon, about another 10 years thereafter, I think the industry collapsed for reasons that they didn't focus on three things. The first one, in getting the production, the seedlings to the farmers, the materials. Number two, in doing the marketing for the production they had done. There is a year, I think in 1983, 84, I mean 93, 94, 95, around there they had a huge production of pyrethrum, and they didn't do enough marketing to sell these. So in the end, they didn't have any money to run the board. But that time, many of us were watching from outside here and said, oh, I think the systems must have collapsed. But in our times, and particularly the time we left them with a lot of money. Maybe, and as you know, in many of these privatization cases, management collapses institutions. Examples are Kenya Airways. So we look at it, and many of us who were there when it was extremely vibrant, very productive, and extremely good to our farmers, it's a pity for the country. And we look forward for somebody to try and revive that industry, because Kenya was the leading pyrethrin or production of pyrethrins in the world.
Right. And yeah. You've just mentioned Kenya Airways. What's your view on the situation at Kenya Airways?
Kenya Airways, for us, it was privatized some times back, as you know. Yes. Now it's about close to 17, 18 years. In the first years, particularly the periods when managing director like Kuni took over, it was doing very well. But I think later, the disease of mismanaging corporations cropped in, and it has gone down, down, down. But now we see some hope that it should be coming back. Right. Even the share capital, the shares, the trading in the NSC have gone down so much. And we hope it will be revamped so that the trading can start again or go up.
All right. Now, when you talk about have the broader conversation on privatization, often when we have these kind of situations, we barely see your commission coming out to speak. Is it that you're not as involved in the conversations and you're just, a body that does not really do much? You're somewhat a proxy, but Treasury actually does the bulk of the work? Because that's whenever there's this, usually just see Treasury largely speaking.
Yes, that is basically true, because Privatization Commission is under the National Treasury. And our work is to try and get those corporations that are not doing very well to make them more productive, to get them on to produce and get profits for the shareholders, and also the balance, of course, goes to the National Treasury. So what we have already done ourselves, we hand over to the Treasury. For example, in the year 2008, when we did the Safaricom, the privatization of Safaricom, which now, as you know, is the leading enterprise or corporation in the country. In fact, the kind of profitability it has, some economists were saying, if we had 100 Safaricom corporations like Safaricom, we'll not need any money from KRA, because it's producing 45
billion shillings.
Billion shillings.
Net profit.
100 corporations will produce 4 trillion. So, really, getting our corporations to produce and be productive is a great thing.
Right. And now the privatization process generally at times takes very long, and the CS has actually at a point says a lot of red tape. What is this red tape that actually slows down the process of privatization?
Yes, it's because the commission does not do it alone. We given the companies that we privatize, we get the process and then hand it over to the National Treasury, who write a cabinet paper for the cabinet to approve that we should take this route to privatize a company. And then they pass it to Parliament. And then Parliament passes it on to us now to do the privatization when it has been wholly approved now. That is the problem with the period you are talking about, why the process takes so long. There are so many institutions or agencies involved, from us to Treasury to Cabinet to the National
Parliament.
Assembly.
And does this mean that we don't have an ideal time frame? That if, for example, a case was presented to you today, we don't have an ideal time frame that you can work with to say that this process should be over within X number of months?
Yes, sometimes it does. If government has got their agencies approved and agreed, then they can give you a time period. But as it is now, there are so many roadblocks. For example, they gave us 5 state-owned controlled sugar companies. The 5 are Miwani, the 3 in Kisumu, Nandi, and Kericho. That's Miwani, Chemelil, and Mohoroni, and then the one in Bungoma, in Nzoia. So the 5 are supposed to be privatized. But then the county governments went to court and said, no, you cannot do this. We should come in and do it. And since Section 187(1) says that the assets of government belong to the national government, this has not been resolved in court. So we are actually stuck for 2 years not having privatized the sugar companies.
Right.
So these are some of the roadblocks.
So sometimes the perception is that when a process is taking very long,
yes,
it is usually an opening for people to eat.
Right.
Is this the case at times with these processes, and what is done to ensure that it doesn't happen that way?
They are under Treasury, but the purpose of privatizing them is because the managers are running them down. So the quicker we do it, the better. But because I have said the process is fairly long, so the managers who are running it down find a way of, as you have said, not doing their job well. So that's really the problem, that probably we need to find a way of getting over this fairly fast. But for us as a commission, we have put a process, and the process does not go more than 6 months to privatize a company. But as I've said, there are these roadblocks.
And how do we safeguard the taxpayers' investment in terms of ensuring that the assets are not devalued? Because at times there could be a situation where there's a certain investor who we want to give,
yes,
to sell off this stake to, but because there's a certain connection with someone in government, they can get the assets at throwaway prices, or the stake at throwaway prices. How do we safeguard this investment?
No, the Privatization Act does not allow anybody to sell a government asset without a process that has been approved by those bodies I've said, by Treasury, Cabinet, and Parliament. You cannot take it. So for us, when it comes to us, of course, as you know, to be able to get these corporations to a productive line is either to sell new shares or do a divestiture, right? And then get them over. If at that time you have enough money to buy, or if we do not get an investor, that's the time you can buy a lot of shares and then control those corporations. But it's not easy to do that. But I think that was one of the problems that Mumias faced. Mumias was privatized a long time ago, 2001. Yes. But yet, when the management collapsed, they say, where is the privatization commission? Why did you do this? Because when we were going around in other sugar factory, they said, you want to make us a Mumias? And we said, no. Mumias, as you know, when we privatized it, for 10 years it was doing very well. And then management all of a sudden ran it down. So for us, we insist that when they do it, then the management should, now it's in their hands, the shareholders. They must make sure they have a management that can run these institutions profitably and gainfully.
Right. And so you've said like Mumias the case has been stuck in court for 2 years. Is this now a situation where once again we see the judiciary being blamed for slowing down a process that would eventually bring some returns?
Yeah, but it's not Mumias. We're not dealing with Mumias ourselves because Mumias is a private company. Yes. It had been sold to the shareholders, the farmers. There are many people who own shares.
For the other
sugar companies.
The Mohoroni,
yes.
Miwani, and
the reason, yes, the answer is yes, because this case is now in court for more than, I think, 3-4 months without a decision. But we cannot blame them too much because the judge who was handling the case was transferred. And we are just at the mercy of the judiciary that they can get either a new judge or get that judge to provide judgment for us to see the way forward.
All right.
So in a way, I think the judiciary is overloaded, as one would say.
All right. And so there was some, like for example, the governors, when they went to court, they said that for these about 5 or so mills, that they would like to have, instead of getting a strategic investor, because the plan was to have 51% go to a strategic investor, then the farmers and the employees could have about 24%, and the national government retains about 25% initially.
Yeah.
So what do you feel is very wrong with what the governors are saying that they would like to have the mills owned by the residents of the county which it is situated in, alongside the county government?
I think the problem is that county government is a government on its own, and the national government is a government. If you are going to make that corporation profitable, then the options are either you get a strategic investor. If you don't want a strategic investor, is then divestiture. You sell new shares. Who would buy the new shares if the corporation is grounded? It is not making profit. Would you get people to invest? Because investors are extremely, those who buy shares are very intelligent people. They cannot go and buy shares in a company that is dying. So either as a county government or a national government, you cannot divest if the company is not profitable. So this is what we normally do to be able now to get the investors. For us, I cannot discuss the case of the sugar companies because we had a process already in place how we will do it. We had given both a strategic investor shares to the farmers, to the employees, and then bid to the government that we was going to oversee the process of privatization. So in a way, I don't think the county governments will be able to make or do the divestiture, which we have been unable. I think the way forward is to agree in accordance with the new constitution who should do it. If they find it's the best to be done by counties, fine, we have no problem. But the constitution vests this under the national government.
And there have been a lot of accusations that the government, the national government, and I guess it also boils down now to you, in this specific case, that you're not consulting the stakeholders as much as you should. The government, the governors, I beg your pardon, said that. In the case of new KCC, the Farmers Federation had also said that you are not consulting them, so they feel like decisions are being hoarded on them, yet they're some of the key players in that.
For the sugar companies, I cannot discuss because we did it. We went through the various stakeholders in consulting. I can only talk about the new KCC, yes, which is on our desk now. That we are done some consultations with the farmers. We have had meetings with the farmers, but now since government has given a go-ahead that we can do it, we are going to do the final consultations with the farmers to see a way forward. But as you know, new KCC has a problem because when the old KCC collapsed in 1999, the instruments, the owners from the original KCC, even as we talk, are not known. All we know is the new register for the new farmers, which we have no problem with. We'll talk with them and see the way forward on how to do it. And for them, I don't think there is too much of a problem because government already, as you know, has given 500 million. And all we'll do is a way forward on how to hand it over to the farmers and an investor, if that is possible, for then that company to be strong and get the farmers to be producing milk for this country.
And some people feel that government should not be in business at all.
Yes, that's true. That's why that commission was set, that many of the corporations where government has invested, we should pull it out. That's why we've done for Safaricom, we did for Kengen, we did for Kenya Airways. We've done for many of them. So government slowly is moving out. But it does have a share, also as a shareholder, just to make sure things are running well in the economy. If you hand over the whole economy to the private sector and something goes wrong, then how does government get out of this mess? This is what we are doing. And it's true, government needs to come out of business.
But there's also the feeling that there's more unsuccessful stories than success stories when it comes to the government's business operations. In terms of, Safaricom maybe is one of the, the few cases where even after privatization it has gone well.
Yes.
But it feels like there's less of that.
I think that's not true, because the companies we are talking that are not doing well are only 2 out of about 20 that have been done since the privatization commission started. Therefore, it's not true that the success stories are not as many. And also, one would say many of the companies that the government surrendered their shares were doing well, so you wouldn't actually know that this was originally owned by government, as I've said.
Does the government still have shares in, say, Portland Cement?
Yes, it does.
Which is also not performing well.
Yeah, but the case is not before us for the privatization yet.
And the National Bank?
National Bank, yes, I would say. As you know, in the banks, the commission had done KCB, and it is quite successful, as you know. Now, the only three banks that are left are National Bank of Kenya, the Development Bank of Kenya, and the Consolidated Bank of Kenya, which, as you know, originated from a consortium of very many banks that were put together, small banks that were amalgamated or merged. So this is what now is under Treasury and Cabinet. They're looking for ways of either to give it back to us to do the process of divestiture, or merge them, or find ways of getting them to be profitable. But I hasten to add that they are doing well, but not at the top of things, as one would say, that they are not competing with KCB and so on. And that is the desire of many Kenyans, including the Commission, that they should be doing well so that our banking industry is vibrant.
And so is the case of KCB wanting to buy National Bank before you? And what is the status of that?
No. The case is not before us. I've seen it in the papers. It's not before us, but you know, that's going to be dealt with the government. And I believe the Monopolies Commission. But I think it's not within us. That is within government right now.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. We're speaking to Henry Obocha, who's the chairman of the Privatization Commission, about some of the issues that are surrounding the topic of privatization and the feeling that government should get out of business because the number of the institutions that it has been watching over as government and been trading through have not performed so well in the past, and giving the government reason to start pulling out. As he said, the government is looking to pull out of business.